Welcome to All Pro Football Data. My name is Jim Coburn, and today's episode we're talking about Frank Gore Jr., running back out of Southern Mississippi, in terms of his production profile. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at Frank Gore Jr. Frank Gore Jr. is the son of former NFL running back Frank Gore. Played on the San Francisco 49ers, played on the New York Jets, played on a lot of different teams before he finally retired. And, of course, we also know him from the U. And interesting prospect, I would say. Name recognition is a thing. I think it is important to follow guys who come from other NFL players because they did have that DNA. They had that thing that made them special, and sometimes their sons also pick up that thing. So let's look at his overall production profile. So if you're new to the channel, new to the stuff that I do, this is how I get my offensive market share scores. You get a raw statistic. You transform it into a market share statistic by taking the individual statistic and then dividing it by the total statistic. So if a running back had 10 touchdowns on a team that had 50, then he had what? 10 touchdowns, 50, 20% market share. You take that number, you compare it to every single running back performance in my database, and that gives you a percentile score, and then that score is then used for the offensive market share score, also weighting age into it a little bit as a factor. Now, in terms of the offensive market share scores, his MSY, or total offensive market share score, was in the 80 percentile. His receiving market share score was in the 70 percentile, and his touchdown market share score was in the 90 percentile. That's a good place to be, a good area to be in terms of his overall production profile. And also, this data set has 2,312 running backs in it since the 1969 NFL draft class. Overall, though, Frank Gore Jr. does have a good overall production profile. And in terms of his efficiency scores, so efficiency scores are done the same way. This takes a look at things like yards per reception, yards per rush. The touchdown percentage is the number of touches divided by the team total touchdowns. And then when you look at his efficiency scores, he has some decent numbers in here as well. His best score was his yards per reception score, which was in the high 80 percentile in terms of him as a receiving back, which is interesting. And then his other scores are, average to slightly below average in terms of his rushing yards per reception and in terms of his TD percentage, which of course is his touchdowns per touch percentage. So not bad, but not exactly elite in terms of his efficiency scores. Looking at his adjusted production scores, which is by far the biggest knock on him, these scores are taken from the age of a prospect, his strength of team, strength of schedule, and also takes a look at all of the scores that we just mentioned. So market share, production. So the MSA looks at market share, strength of schedule, strength of team, and the age score combined, and then ranked against positional peers. And then the pass score takes the market share score, the efficiency scores, age, strength of team, strength of schedule, adds all those scores together to give you the pass score, which is basically a cumulative score for it all together. I know a lot of people want me to call it like the big running back score. I'm not going to do all that. I might get new names for this stuff, but the basic stuff or thing for you to understand about this is it's context for the production. It gives you context. So how productive were they for the team that they were on? How productive were they for the schedule that they faced? How productive were they for their age? These are context things that you need to know about their production profile, because you could ball out at Weber State and not do nothing at the NFL level. And there's a reason why guys who played Alabama, played all these big prime programs, who put up really great production, end up becoming really great players, and guys who play at other programs and are really great at the position at their respective program don't necessarily translate as much. That's because of the context. The context of their production is just as important as their actual production. So when you look at his adjusted production data, he did his age score was above average. His MSA score was in the 69 percentile, and his pass score was in the 70 percentile. You might go, well, what is about? Well, if you look at the All-Pro averages in terms of adjusted production, it's 90 percentile, 90 percentile. He's not there. You look at the Pro Bowl averages, that's 80 percentile, 80 percentile in terms of MSA and pass score. Frank Gore Jr. is not there. When you look at the starter averages at the position, 79 percentile, 78 percentile. Frank Gore Jr. is still not there. Does this mean he can't be a starter? No. But he had great production data, but it was at Southern Miss. That's the biggest issue with him in terms of his overall projection. He didn't play at the U. If he put up the numbers that he put up at Southern Mississippi, at the University of Miami, especially at the University of Miami when they were the U, we'd be having a different conversation here. But ultimately, he just doesn't hit the marks he needs to make. Now, in terms of his comparisons for Frank Gore Jr., these are the running backs that tested the best based on things like his offensive market share score, his MSA score, expected approximate value score, which is a metric which kind of takes into account everything again, but kind of gives a expected value score for it, and then the age score. When you look at that, here are the running backs that he tested with. He tested with guys like Brandon Bennett, Steve Broussard, Elijah McGuire, John Kelly, Jason Huntley, Leroy Harris, Alty Taylor, David Montgomery, and Adrian Morrell. A lot of people are going to look at David Montgomery and Adrian Morrell and go, aha, look, positives here. But that's not exactly an elite company to be with. The bottom line is, with the outlook for Frank Gore Jr., is that he profiles as a backup to starter long term. The biggest red flag is his production for his level of competition was not elite. Most backs with this type of production become backups, more so than starters. Gore Jr. has the advantage, though, of being in a weak running back class, but he will still need to test well as an athlete. This is a big key factor for him, is he will have to test really well as an athlete to really get some momentum for his draft stock. Because based on what I'm seeing right now, this isn't a first-round running back. This isn't a second-round running back. This isn't even a third-round running back. This is more so a day 3 prospect at any other running back class. You're going to have guys who just test better in terms of their overall data. So that's the biggest concern with Frank Gore Jr. Yes, he is a son of what some people consider to be the GOAT, or one of the GOATs, I'm honestly tired of the whole GOAT thing. Greatest of all time. I mean, come on. Come on. But I digress. That is Frank Gore Jr.'s overall profile in a nutshell. Now, of course, my name is Jim Coburn. You can follow my other work at Geometrics on Twitter or X, at JIMETRICS. Also, check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/JCoburn. JCOBERN. And with all that stuff out of the way, thank you guys for watching this episode. Peace!